Hello viewers and welcome to another chapter of reading. So let's get started, shall we? Chapter 5. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. Try saying that 3 times fast. I'll demonstrate. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. Weasley's Wizard Wheezes. Okay, on to reading. Harry spun faster and faster, elbow tucked tightly to his sides, board fireplaces flashing past him, until he started to feel sick and closed his eyes. I'd feel sick too, honestly. Then, when at last he felt himself slowing down, he threw out his hands and came to a halt in time to prevent himself from falling face forward out of the Weasley's kitchen fire. "Did he eat it?" said Fred excitedly, holding out the hands that pulled Harry to his feet. "Yeah," said Harry, straightening up. "What was it?" Tun toffee," said Fred brightly. "George and I invented them, and we've been looking for someone to test them on all summer." The tiny kitchen exploded with laughter. Harry looked around and saw that Ron and George were sitting at the scrubbed wooden table with 2 red-haired people Harry had never seen before, though he knew immediately who they must be. Bill and Charlie, the 2 eldest Weasley brothers. I kind of wish we met Charlie in the films. It makes me wonder who would have portrayed him. What about you guys? Let me know who you think would make a good Charlie in the comments. "How you doing, Harry?" said the nearer of the 2, grinning at him and holding out a large hand, which Harry shook, feeling calluses and blisters under his fingers. This had to be Charlie, who worked with dragons in Romania. Charlie was built like the twins, shorter and stockier than Percy and Ron, who were both long and lanky. He had a broad, good-natured face, which was weather-beaten and so freckly that he looked almost tanned. His arms were muscular, and one of them had a large, shiny burn on it. That must hurt. Bill got to his feet, smiling, and also shook Harry's hand. Bill came as something of a surprise. Harry knew that he worked for the Wizarding Gringotts, and that Bill had been head boy at Hogwarts. Harry had always imagined Bill to be an older version of Percy, fussy about rule-breaking and fond of bossing everyone around. However, there was no other word for it. Cool. And that he is. He was tall with long hair that he had tied back into a ponytail. Ooh. Bodacious image there, J.K. Rowling. Don't get jealous, love. He was wearing an earring with what looked like a plain dangling from it. Bill's clothes would not have looked out of place at a rock concert, except that Harry recognized his boots to be made of not leather, but of dragon hide. They must be sturdy boots then. Before any of them can say anything else, there was a faint popping noise, and Mr. Weasley appeared out of thin air at George's shoulder. He was looking angrier than Harry had ever seen him. "That wasn't funny, Fred!" he shouted. "What on earth did you give that Muggle boy?" "I didn't give him anything," said Fred with another evil grin. "He just dropped it. It was his fault he went and ate it. I never told him to." "You dropped it on purpose!" roared Mr. Weasley. "You knew he didn't eat it. You knew he was on a diet. How big did his tongue get?" George asked eagerly. "It was 4 feet long before his parents would let me shrink it." Harry and the Weasleys roared with laughter again. "It isn't funny!" Mr. Weasley shouted. "That sort of behavior seriously undermines Muggle relations. I spent half of my life campaigning against the mistreatment among us, and my own sons." "We didn't give it to him because he's a Muggle," said Fred indignantly. "No, we gave it to him because he's a great bullying gift," said George. "Isn't he, Harry?" "Yeah, he is, Mr. Weasley," said Harry earnestly. "That's not the point," raged Mr. Weasley. "You wait until I tell you, Mother." "Tell me what?" said a voice behind him. Mrs. Weasley had just entered the kitchen. She was a short, plump woman with a very kind face, though her eyes were presently narrowed with suspicion. "Oh, hello, Harry dear," she said, spotting him and smiling. Then her eyes snapped back to her son. "Tell me what, Arthur?" Mr. Weasley hesitated. Harry could tell that, however angry he was with Fred and George, he hadn't really intended to tell Mrs. Weasley what had happened. Smart move. There was a silence while Mr. Weasley eyed his wife nervously. Then two girls appeared in the kitchen doorway behind Mrs. Weasley. One with very bushy brown hair and rather large front teeth was Harry and Ron's best friend, Hermione Granger. The other, who was small and red-haired, was Ron's younger sister, Ginny. Both of them smiled at Harry, who grinned back, which made Ginny go scarlet. She had been very well taken with Harry ever since his first visit to the Burrow. "Tell me what, Arthur?" Mrs. Weasley repeated in a dangerous sort of voice. "Nothing," Molly mumbled. Mr. Weasley, "Fred and George just... But I've had words with them." "What have they done this time?" "What have they done this time?" said Mrs. Weasley. "If it's got to do with anything with Weasley's Wizard Wheezes..." "Why don't you show Harry where he's sleeping, Ron?" said Hermione from the doorway. "He knows where he's sleeping," said Ron. "In my room. He slept there last." "We can all go," said Hermione pointedly. "Oh, oh," said Ron, cottoning on. "Right. Yeah, we'll come too," said George. "You stay where you are!" snarled Mrs. Weasley. Harry and Ron edged out of the kitchen, and they, Hermione, and Ginny set off along the narrow hallway and up the rickety staircase that zigzagged through the house to the upper stories. "What are Weasley's Wizard Wheezes?" Harry asked as they climbed. Ron and Ginny both laughed, although Hermione didn't. "Mum found the stack of order forms when she was paying Fred and George's room," Ron said quietly. "Great long price list for stuff they invented. Joke stuff, you know. Fake wands and trick sweets. Loads of stuff. It was brilliant. I never knew they'd been inventing all that. We've been hearing explosions out of the room for ages. But we never thought they were actually making things," said Ginny. "We just thought they liked the noise. Only most of the stuff, well, all of it really, was a bit dangerous," said Ron. And And, you know, they were planning to sell it at Hogwarts to make some money. And Mum went mad at them. Told them that they weren't allowed to make any more of it and burned all the uniforms. She's furious at them anyway. They didn't get as many out as she expected," said Ron. "Owls were ordinary wizarding levels. The examinations Hogwarts students took at the age of 15. I think I would exceeds expectations on most, but astronomy, defense against the dark arts, and transfiguration would get an outstanding. For herbology and potions, I guess we'll go with acceptable and exceeds expectations, respectively. Let's just say mud is not my best friend, as I'm sure you remember from the Quidditch chapters." "And there was this big row, Ginny, because Mum and Dad wants them to go into the Ministry of Magic like that, and they told her all they wants to do is open a joke shop," said Ginny. Just then a door on the second landing opened, and a face poked out wearing horn-rimmed glasses and a very annoyed expression. "Hi, Percy," said little Harry. said Harry. Oh, hello, Harry, said Percy. I was wondering who was making all the noise. I'm trying to work here, you know. I've got a report to finish for the office, and it's rather difficult to concentrate when people keep thundering up and down the stairs. Well, not thundering, said Ron quickly. We're walking. Sorry if we've disturbed the top secret workings of the Ministry of Magic. What are you working on? Said Harry. A report for the Department of International Magical Cooperation, said Percy smugly. We're trying to standardize cauldron thickness. Some of these foreign imports are just a shade too thin. Leakages have been increasing at a rate of almost 3% a year. Okay, say what you want about Percy, but his concern about this topic is actually well placed. It's nice to know that someone is showing that they care about this type of thing. So for Percy to try to find a way to prevent this, it actually warms my heart because I imagine that if the cauldron place were to sell those types of cauldrons and then for Hogwarts students to use them, that would be very bad for business. I don't exactly have a marketing degree, but I do have marketing experience, so I do know a few things on this topic. Moving on. That'll change the world, that report will, said Ron. Front page of Daily Prophet, I expect cauldron links. Percy went slightly pink. Might snare, Ron, he said heatedly, but unless some sort of international law is imposed, we might as well find the market flooded with flimsy, shadow-bottomed products that seriously endanger. Yeah, right, said Ron, and he started off upstairs again. Percy slammed his bedroom door shut. As Harry, Hermione, and Ginny followed Ron up 3 more flights of stairs, shouts from the kitchen below echoed up to them. It sounded as though Mr. Weasley had told Mrs. Weasley about the toffees. The room at the top of the house where Ron slept looked much as it had the last time Harry had come to stay. The same posters of Ron's favorite Quidditch team, the Chudley Cannons, were rolling and waving on the walls and sloping ceiling. The fish tank on the windowsill, which had previously held frog spawn, now contained one extremely large frog. Ron's old rat Scabbers was here no more, but instead there was the tiny grey owl that had delivered Ron's letter to Harry in Pivot Drive. It was hopping up and down in a small cage and twittering madly. Shut up, pig, said Ron, edging his way between the 2 of the 4 beds that had been squeezed into the room. Fred and George are here with us because they're trying on never, he told Harry. Percy gets to keep his room all to himself because he's got to what? Why are you calling that owl pig? Harry asked Ron. Because he's being stupid, said Ginny. Its proper name is Pigwidgeon. Pigwidgeon. Yeah, and that's not a stupid name at all, said Ron sarcastically. Ginny named him, he explained to Harry. She reckons it's sweet. Well, I think it's sweet. And I tried to change it, but it was too late. He won't answer to anything else. So now he's big. I've got to keep him up here because he knows Errol and Herms. He annoys me too, to that. Pigwidgeon zoomed happily around his cage, hooting shrilly. Harry knew Ron too well to take him seriously. He had moaned continuously about his old rat Scabbers, but it had been most upset when Hermione's cat Crookshanks appeared to have eaten him. We know that's not the case. Where's Crookshanks? Harry asked Hermione. In the garden, I expect, she said. He likes chasing gnomes. He's never seen any before. Percy's enjoying work then, said Harry, sitting down on one of the beds and watching the Chudley cannon zooming in and out of the posters on the ceiling. Enjoying it? Said Ron darkly. I don't reckon he'd come home if Dad didn't make him. He's obsessed. Just don't get him onto the subject of spots. According to Mr. Crouch, as I was saying to Mr. Crouch is of the opinion, Mr. Crouch was telling me they'll be announcing their engagement any day now. Oh, that's funny. Have you had a good summer, Harry? Said Hermione. Did you get our fruit parcels and everything? Yeah, thanks a lot, said Harry. They saved my life, those cakes. And have you heard from... Oops, wrong voice. And have you heard from... Ron began, but a look at... From Hermione, he fell silent. Harry knew Ron had been about to ask about Sirius. I do wish they would wonder about Lupin too. Lupin clearly left an impact on his students, and for them not to keep in touch with him, that kind of makes a little bit of no sense. Like, really. Ron and Hermione had been so deeply involved in helping Sirius escape from the Ministry of Magic that they were almost as concerned about Harry's godmother as he was. However, discussing him in front of Ginny was a bad idea. Nobody but themselves and Professor Dumbledore knew about how Sirius had escaped or believed in his innocence. I think they've stopped arguing, said Hermione to cover the awkward moment, because Ginny was looking curiously from Ron to Harry. Shall we go down and help your mom with dinner? Yeah, all right, said Ron. The four of them left Ron's room and went back downstairs to find Mrs. Weasley alone in the kitchen, looking extremely bad-tempered. We're eating out in the garden, she said when they came in. There's just not room for 11 people in here. Could you take the place inside, girls? Bill and Charlie are setting up the tables. Knives and forks, please, you two, she said to Ron and Harry, pointing her wand a little more vigorously than she had intended at a pile of potatoes in the sink, which shot out of their skins so fast that they ricocheted off the walls and ceiling. That actually would be a useful spell to have. That way you don't have to use potato peeler. Just make sure you use it properly so the potatoes don't become flying bullets. Oh, for heaven's sake! She snapped, now directing her wand at a dustpan which popped off the sideboard and started skating across the floor, scooping up the potatoes. Those two! She burst out savagely, now pulling pots and pans out of the cupboard, and Harry knew she meant Fred and George. Excuse me. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I really don't. No ambition, unless you count making as much trouble as they possibly can. Mrs. Weasley slammed a large copper saucepan down on the kitchen table and began to wave her wand around inside it. A creamy sauce poured from the wand tip as she stirred. It's not as though they haven't got brains, she continued irritably, taking the saucepan over to the stove and lighting it with the further poke of her wand. But they're wasting them. And unless they pull themselves together soon, they'll be in real trouble. I've had more hours from Hogwarts about them than the rest put together. carry on the way they're going, they'll end up in front of the improper use of magic office. Mrs. Weasley jabbed her wand at the cupboard drawer, which shot open. Harry and Ron both jumped out of the way as several knives soared out of it. I definitely would be moving backward too. Flew across the kitchen and began chopping up the potatoes, which had been just tipped back into the sink by the dustpan. I don't know where we went wrong with them, said Mrs. Weasley, putting down her wand and starting to pull out still more saucepans. It's been the same for years, one thing after another, and they won't listen to— Oh, not again! She had picked up her wand from the table, and because it had emitted a loud squeak and turned into a giant rubber mouse. One of their fake wands again, she shouted. How many times have I told them not to leave them lying around? She grabbed her real wand and turned around to find that the sauce on the stove was smoking. Oh, Mrs. Weasley, you deserve this hug. I definitely would help out. Come on. Said Ron hurriedly. Harry seized a handful of cutlery from the open drawer. Let's go and help them, Charlie. They whipped Mrs. Weasley and headed out the back door into the yard. They had only gone a few paces when Hermione's bandy-legged ginger cat, Crookshanks, came pelting out of the garden. Bottle brush tail held high in the air, chasing what looked like a muddy potato on legs. Harry recognized it instantly as a gnome. Barely 10 inches high, its horny little feet pattered very fast as it sprinted across the yard and dived headlong into one of the Wellington boats that lay scattered around the door. I honestly would love a pair of Wellingtons. I bet they would definitely show my Anglophilia well. Just make them decorative, or else I won't wear them. Harry could hear the gnome giggling madly as Crookshanks inserted a paw into the boot, trying to reach it. Meanwhile, a very loud crashing noise was coming from the other side of the house. The source of the commotion was revealed as they entered the garden, and saw that Bill and Charlie both had their wands out, and they were making two battered old tables fly high above the lawn, smashing into each other, each attempting to knock the others out of the air. Fred and George were cheering. Ginny was laughing, and Hermione was hovering near the hedge, apparently torn between amusement and anxiety. Bill's table caught Charlie's with a huge bang, and knocked one of its legs off. There was a clatter from overhead, and they all looked up to see Percy's head poking out of a window on the second floor. Will you keep it down? He bellowed. Sorry, Percy, said Bill, grinning. How about the cauldron bottom's coming on? Very badly, said Percy peevishly. And he slammed the window shut. Chuckling, Bill and Charlie directed the table safely onto the grass, end to end, and then with a flick of his wand, Bill reattached the table leg and conjured tablecloths from nowhere. By 7 o'clock, the two tables were groaning under dishes of Mrs. Weasley's excellent cream, and the 9 Weasleys, Harry and Hermione, were settling themselves down to eat beneath the clear, deep blue sky. Yeah, I guess the sky is kind of like that now. Would you like a visual? Because I'm going to show you anyway. There's your visual. It's very pretty, isn't it? Now on to the continuance. To somebody who had been living on meals of increasingly stale cake all summer, this was paradise. And at first, Harry listened rather than talked as he helped himself to chicken and ham pie, boiled potatoes, and salad. Mmm. Okay. Definitely wanting to find a recipe for those, because they sound so good. Okay, definitely. If I had to choose just one though, I'm going with the chicken and ham pie. That sounds most appealing, and I'm just thinking about it. At the far end of the table, Percy was telling his father all about his report on cauldron bottoms. I've told Mr. Crouch that I'll have it ready by Tuesday, Percy was saying pompously. That's a bit sooner than he expected it, but I like to keep on top of things. I think he'll be grateful I've done it in good time. I mean, it's extremely busy in our department just now with all the arrangements for the World Cup. We're just not getting the support we need from the Department of Magical Games and Sports. Ludo Bagman. Fun little tidbit. Ludo is a name that means I play. So, this is quite fitting for his status as the head for the Department of Magical Games and Sports, don't you think? I like Ludo, said Mr. Weasley mildly. He was the one who got us such good tickets for the cup. I did him a bit of a favor. His brother Otto got into a spot of trouble, a lawnmower with unnatural powers. I smoothed the whole thing over. Oh, Bagman's likable enough, of course, said Percy dismissively. But how he ever got to be head of the department when I compare him to Mr. Crouch, I can't see Mr. Crouch losing a member of our department, not trying to find out what's happened to them. You realize Bertha Jorgens has been missing for over a month now? Went on holiday to Albania and never came back. Yes, I was asking Ludo about that, said Mr. Weasley, frowning. He says Bertha's gotten lost plenty of times before now, so I must say if it was someone in my department, I'd be worried. Bertha's hopeless, all right, said Percy. I hear she's been shunted from department to department for years. Much more trouble than she's worth. But all the same, Bagman ought to be trying to find her. Mr. Crouch has been taking a personal interest. She worked in our department at one time, you know. And I think Mr. Crouch was quite fond of her. But Bagman just keeps laughing and saying she probably misread the map and ended up in Australia instead of Albania. At least she's surrounded by beautiful beaches, if that's the case. However, Percy heaved an impressive sigh and took a deep swig of elderflower wine. It actually sounds good. We've got quite enough on our plate at the Department of International Magical Cooperation without trying to find members of other departments too. As you know, we've got another big event to organize right after the World Cup. Percy cleared his throat significantly. And looked down toward the end of the table where Harry, Ron, and Hermione were sitting. You know what I'm talking about, Father. He raised his voice slightly. The top secret. I know what it is too, but that would be spoilers, and I'm not going to share them with you. You're just going to have to wait and see. Sorry. Ron rolled his eyes and muttered to Harry and Hermione. He's been trying to get us to ask what the event is ever since he started work, probably an exhibition of thick-bottomed cauldrons. In the middle of the table, Mrs. Weasley was arguing with Bill about his earrings, which seemed to be a recent acquisition. It's a horrible vein on it. Really, Bill, what do they say to paint? how I dress as long as I bring home plenty of treasures, said Bill patiently. And your hair's getting silly, dear, figuring how go on with me. I wish you'd let me give it a trim. I like it, said Jenny, who was sitting beside Bill. You're so old-fashioned, Mom. Anyway, it's nowhere near as long as Professor Dumbledore's. Next to Mrs. Weasley, Fred, George, and Charlie were all talking spiritedly about the World Cup. It's got to be Ireland. Here go Brock! I know that was very not fluent Irish, but bear with me. It means Ireland forever. And, well, part of my ancestry is indeed Irish, said Charlie thickly through a mouthful of potato. They fought Peru in the semifinals. Bulgaria has got Victor Crumb, though, said Fred. Crumb's one decent player. Ireland has got 7, said Charlie Shore. I wish England had got them. It was embarrassing. What happened? Said Harry, eagerly regretting more than ever his isolation from the Wizarding World when he was stuck on Pivot Drive. Went down to Transylvania, 390 to 10, said Charlie. Shocking performance. And Wales lost to Uganda, and Scotland was lost by Luxembourg. Harry had been on the Gryffindor House Quidditch team ever since his first year at Hogwarts, and owned one of the best racing rooms in the world, a Firebolt. Flying came naturally to Harry than anything else in the magical world, and he played in position of Seeker on the Gryffindor House team. Mr. Weasley conjured up candles to light the darkening garden before they had their homemade strawberry ice cream. I'll take vanilla, please. Fruit allergy. Although I do wonder how watermelon ice cream tastes. I'll have to find a recipe. Moving on. And by the time they had finished, moths were fluttering low over the table, and the warm air was perfumed with the smell of grass and honeysuckle. Harry was feeling extremely well-fed and at peace with the world as he watched several gnomes sprinting through the rose bushes, laughing madly and closely pursued by Crookshanks. Ron looked carefully up at the table to check that the rest of the team were all busy talking. And then he said very quietly to Harry, "So, have you had them serious lately?" Hermione looked around, listening closely. "Yeah," said Harry softly. "Twice. He sounds okay. I read to him yesterday. Might write back while I'm here." He suddenly remembered the reason he had written to Sirius, and for a moment was on the verge of telling Ron and Hermione about his scar hurting again, and about the dream that had awoken him. But he really didn't want to worry them just now, not when he himself was feeling so happy and peaceful. "Look at the time." Oops, wrong voice. "Look at the time," said Mrs. Weasley suddenly, tugging her wristwatch. "You really should be in bed, the whole lot of you. You'll be up at the crack of dawn to get to the cup. Harry, if you leave your school list out, I'll get your things for you tomorrow in Diagon Alley. I'm getting everyone else's. There might not be time after the World Cup. The match went on for 5 days last time." "Wow! Hope it does it this time," said Harry enthusiastically. "Well, I certainly don't," said Percy sanctimoniously. "I shudder to think what the state of my intro would be if I was away from work for 5 days. Yeah, someone might slip dragon down in it again, eh, Puss?" said Ron. "That was a sample of fertilizer from Norway," said Percy, going very red in the face. "It was nothing personal." "It was," Fred whispered to Harry as they got up from the table. "We sent it." And that is the hilarious end to this chapter. Join me next week for chapter 6, the Portkey. Bye!